All right, everybody. Good morning. Just a few more head coaching candidate profiles, I promise. I know most people are kind of getting sick of it. I know most people are kind of like, we've already talked about everyone that's worth talking about. And look, as of right now, there are 5 head coach openings, and still available are Belichick, Harbaugh, Vrabel, Ben Johnson, and McDonald. So honestly, we should get through the rest of these hirings without anybody having to do anything crazy, right? Like, you've got the greatest coach of all time, uh, the guy who just won the national championship and was a very successful NFL coach a decade ago. You've got the hot offensive coordinator prospect, the hot defensive coordinator prospect, and a guy who was moderately successful as a head coach and is still under 50 years old from Tennessee. So that should kind of take care of it. I kind of agree. But that doesn't mean something surprising won't happen, right? We got to at least talk about it. And I got another candidate here that a lot of people are not going to really be feeling. I'm not expecting a lot of excitement for Drew Petzing. He's got a very short resume, and only some of it is good. He probably needs more time in the oven, but this is a guy who has gotten a little bit of heat as a head coaching possibility, and I think we need to at least discuss it for one video. So I know that we're in the long shots here, but Drew Petzing, there is a little bit of momentum here. It's not going to be enough for him to outstrip the likes of the Ben Johnsons and the Bobby Slowicks and Dave Canaleses even of the world. But let's talk about Drew Petzing for a little bit. He's going to be 37 years old when the season starts next year, very young. He has 1 year of coordinator experience with the Arizona Cardinals. And look, it wasn't very good, but that Arizona Cardinals offense is also not very good. So you do what you can, you make the best of what you have, and honestly, it wasn't that bad. Their offense, 24th in the league, their EPA was 22nd. Again, not good. In fact, I would be very, very comfortable in calling this bad. But when you look at what he had to work with, the quarterbacks, the receivers, the running backs, the offensive line, I think it's actually a pretty decent job. Arizona was a team that went 4 and 13 but was in almost every game they played. And they gave some teams a run for their money and even beat some good teams. They beat the Cowboys, they beat the Eagles. So Petzing got some positive press this year, even coordinating a bad offense. But what is there other than that? You've got a year as the Cleveland Browns quarterback coach, 2022, where he coached mostly Jacoby Brissett and actually got pretty decent play out of him. Brissett was a respectable stopgap quarterback, 89 QB rating, 2,600 yards, etc., etc. And then Deshaun Watson took over at the end of the year. I think it was like, what, 6 or 7 games, and played poorly. But that might have more to do with Deshaun Watson than it does anybody else at this point. I don't know what Deshaun Watson is anymore. So 2022, I mean, it's not a bad job, right? Jacoby Brissett looked pretty decent under his tutelage, but at the same time, he wasn't exactly able to get Deshaun Watson back on the right track. And in fairness, maybe nobody could have, but he didn't. 2 years before that, 2020, 2021, he was the tight end coach for the Cleveland Browns. And the Cleveland Browns were one of the few teams in the league that actually had 3 semi-prolific tight end receivers. Not often that happens. Like the Seahawks did it in 2022 with Disley, Parkinson, and Fant. But most teams do not have 3 prolific receiving tight ends. The Browns did both of these years, relatively speaking. Austin Hooper was solid for them, had about almost 800 yards across these 2 seasons. You had David Njoku coming up with about almost 600, 700 receiving yards. And then you had Harrison Bryant coming up with close to 500. We're talking about 450, I guess, 460. So 3 guys that were fairly productive across these 2 seasons. So I'd say he did a good job as a tight end coach. Not often you see a tight end room with 3 guys that are actually productive receivers. Obviously, Austin Hooper was kind of near the end of his career. Harrison Bryant was kind of a never was more than anything. And Njoku has played better in recent seasons than he played in 2020 and 2021. But there was some stuff going on there, I think, with injuries as well. So, not a bad job in Cleveland. Not bad. I'm willing to give him a little bit of credit here. You go back to his previous stint, it was in Minnesota. He actually spent several years coming up in the Minnesota tree. Most recently, he was their wide receiver coach in 2019. Stefon Diggs had one of his better seasons, 1,100 yards. Adam Thielen was, I think he missed most of the season. He only had 400 yards. So, not one of his better seasons. No other super prolific receivers for this Minnesota team. It was mostly, at that point, like tight ends, like I think Kyle Rudolph, and they had good receiving backs, like, I believe this was a Dalvin Cook year. Year before that, he was the assistant quarterback coach for 1 year with Kirk Cousins, and Kirk Cousins did what he always did, put up really good numbers, have really pretty stats, and still not really get the respect of most people across the NFL because it didn't amount to quite enough. So, didn't do a bad job, didn't really do a great job, just kind of did a job. Kirk Cousins had a typical Kirk Cousins season when he was the assistant quarterback coach. Before that, for 2 years, he was the assistant wide receiver coach. So, I mean, if you want to give him some credit for what he did developing guys like Adam Thielen and Stefon Diggs over this period of time, I think you could. I think you could definitely do that. Stefon Diggs and Adam Thielen both became very prolific receivers, in part under his tutelage. And Diggs, in particular, has become one of the more prolific receivers of the last decade or so. And in 2016, there was also Cordarrelle Patterson. He had a good receiving season that year, almost 500 yards, 52 catches. So yeah, I'd say this was a pretty decent run. The only issue is it kind of got worse with each passing year. He was associated with the receivers, so Thielen kind of didn't have a good 2019, and Diggs was traded to Buffalo at a certain point, so it wasn't exactly something headed in a great direction. But some stuff to maybe hang your hat on a little bit here. And finally, his start was an offensive assistant in 2014, 2015 for the Vikings for two offenses that were average, maybe a little below average, just kind of okay. Not much to say there. Again, there are people above his head that have way more to do with the offense than he ever will at this point when he's an offensive assistant. So, yeah, there's some stuff here that I don't mind, but there's no way there's enough here for him to actually get a head coaching gig right now. So, Drew Petzing, good job in 2023, but you got to go back and do it again. You're going to have a full year of either Kyler Murray or rookie QB X in 2024. If you can put together a good offense with Arizona in 2024, then it might be time to warm up the head coaching gigs then. As of right now, though, I don't really know if I understand why this guy's getting buzz. And in fairness, it's not that much buzz. And I think it's understood at this point that there's no way this guy is jumping the line ahead of Ben Donald or Ben Johnson or Mike McDonald or anybody like that. You would need a lot of guys to say, I don't want a head coaching job. I'm going to stay as a coordinator for Petzing to get his turn. All right, I will see you guys later. We got a few more of these to get through, and then we'll kind of take a big step back and see where we stand with all these guys. And yeah, thanks for watching. Let me know what you guys think, if anything. I know there's not a lot to think with this guy necessarily, but let me know what you think. Just where's he headed? Could you see this maybe working out down the line, if not right now? All right, go Hawks.